According to market mix modeling, audio ads are 3.5 times more effective if they use stats, like 3.5 times.
Market mix modelling knows that everything is measurable. Right now, we are tracking your pupil dilation, galvanic skin response, and general levels of arousal, and determining the effectiveness of this ad.
Or if you want to get serious about measuring effectiveness, talk to Mutinex. They're the world's leading SaaS provider of market mix modeling. Marketers, think of it as a growth co-pilot. Mutinex, make better decisions.
America's not short of being able to find access to celebrities for sure. I think there's definitely a difference between strategic, mutually beneficial talent partnerships as opposed to just the insertion of a celebrity. We love it because, to John's point before around really trying to engage audiences at scale without relying on paid media alone. A great way of doing that is the exponential value you can get from great talent partnerships.
G'day, mate.
Brent.
So, Adam, brands getting into culture.
Yeah, that sounds very familiar.
Yeah, feels like a lot of brands want to, don't they? And talk about it.
They do, but I don't quite know why. Is there a benefit to it?
I've always thought so. I mean, I've always believed that.
How can you not be a brand in culture? Like just existing, I'm in culture. Just by existing in the world, you're in culture, aren't
That's true. That's true. So maybe in culture's not the right way to talk about it. Maybe it's brands that are able to
Don't talk about starting a movement.
No. Cultural significance, maybe.
Yeah.
I like the idea of brands can have an unfair share of culture. That they're more sort of present in culture and more in the cultural conversation than other brands.
And is that good for business, is it?
I believe it is, because the benefit you get then is a whole bunch of earned media, right? You get a whole much more. If at the end of the game we're trying to get attention, then what a brilliant way to get more attention than other brands get.
For the sake of this introduction, I'll go along with you.
Because you want to wind this introduction up. Now, we're going to talk to a couple of guys that found an agency that seems to be really good at getting brands into culture.
Great.
They're based in LA. The agency's MIRIMAR, started by two Aussie brothers, John and Luke McKelvey.
Yeah.
And we've got both the brothers on today's episode.
From Miramax?
From MIRIMAR.
MIRIMAR. Great. Okay, two brothers from MIRIMAR.
MIRIMAR. Welcome, John. Welcome, Luke, to Black T-Shirts. How are you both?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having us on.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for coming on. Are you wearing black T-shirts?
I've got one underneath my blue sweater, so yes, but
that counts.
It's somewhat concealed.
We'll take that. Luke, black T-shirt?
No, I'm not, but I brought one with me because I thought that was the brief. So
you brought one with you?
Bag if I need to change.
What a weird response. Like, how could we? Well, surely you'd either put one on or not.
Well, it's good to be prepared, Adam. It's good to be prepared.
But what could possibly happen where we would say, now go and put your black T-shirt on?
Oh, I don't know where this is. I'm not sure where this is going to go. So I wanted to be prepared.
And are you guys, I mean, is a black T-shirt part of your staple wardrobe, being advertising professionals?
I think so. It's it always cringes you when it's said like that, but I think absolutely it is. Yeah, I always wear them all the time.
Same. Easy.
Why?
I like them. I think they make you, you feel good. They're a bit nicer than a regular T-shirt, but you're not quite feeling uncomfortable. I've got a million black T-shirts. I love them. I've spent a lot of money on plain ones, which are, not the smartest move, but I love them.
Have you found the perfect brand of plain black T-shirt?
Mr. Simple.
I did. I don't know if I can pronounce it correctly. It was this. It was a Danish brand, like I'm messing it up. But it had a store in New York, and they made beautiful black T-shirts that were suitably expensive but comfortable. And I wore them to death. And then the store closed down, so I kind of had one magic black T-shirt for a long time that I just retired about a week ago without even doing the connection to this podcast.
Oh, there you go.
So Anko from Kmart, $4.95. They're very, very good.
Adam.
And
okay.
Mr. Simple, they're a bit more expensive. They're like $29.95.
That's a lot for you.
But they're very good quality.
I'm amazed that you'd spend $30 on a T-shirt. That really surprised me. Now, just so we're clear, obviously you guys are brothers. Who's the older brother?
That'll be me. We've got an older brother still, David, but I'm out of the MIRIMAR founders. I'm older.
Three boys. Are you from a family of three boys?
3 boys, yep.
Yeah, I've got 3 boys. That's interesting.
Oh, nice.
And who's the business guy and who's the creative guy, or are you both creative guys?
I'm CEO and John is Chief Creative Officer.
Was that sort of clear from a young age that one of you is more business and one of you is more creative?
Yeah, I think so. I think we had pretty different careers. I mean, within the same industry, so they can't be too different, right? But we set off on different paths for sure, and kind of got to a point where we felt comfortable enough to be able to do what we do and complement each other, and I think not compete. I think John's got, he's an entrepreneur as well and kind of got a good business sense, and I hopefully provide a bit of insight into creative things. So I think there's a helpful amount of overlap. Certainly when we started out, there was a helpful amount of overlap, but now as we've gotten a little bit bigger, I think that distinction is clear and probably better for the business as well. But yeah, I think earlier on you can be a little bit more similar because it's helpful when you've got to wear so many hats, but now it's definitely better to stay in our lanes a bit more.
Does John get more involved in the business, or does Luke get more involved in the creative? Who interferes on whose turf more?
I think Luke steps into the creative, but he's welcome. He's welcome. He's got good taste in it, and he's got a good background in production and TV, and always helps make things better. But I think he probably has his role morphs into mine more than the other way around. I care about the business. I like being part of the important decisions, but I try and sort of moonwalk away from too much financial stress.
Moonwalk. I like the moonwalk away. That's the ultimate compliment, Luke, that you get welcomed into the creative I mean, as a suit myself. I mean, that's the ultimate compliment, I reckon, when you're welcome into the creative process versus sort of trying to, ram your way in. So
absolutely.
Have you always been really passionate about the creative side of the business and had more of a creative side to your advertising career?
I think so. I think for a long while I was a little bit tortured with that, though, to be completely honest, because I worked in advertising agencies, and then, as John said, I worked at Viacom for a while before going to Glue Society for a chapter as well. And they're all really creative businesses, and they're small or they're integrated enough that you can kind of get your hands dirty on the creative side of things as well as understanding the business and commercial side of things. And if I spent too much time doing the business side of things, I got frustrated. And if I spent too much time just on the creative side of things, I wasn't really scratching that itch. So I always looked for these kind of hybrid roles that allowed me to kind of flex into both those worlds. And then probably the ultimate hybrid version is, starting your own company, so you can do those different roles at different moments. So yeah, it's definitely been, the duality for sure has been there from the beginning, which is I don't know, I enjoy it. And then I've been heavily involved in the production side of things as well, and so that scratches that itch of making and having an opinion during the process.
Yeah. And in the production world, especially someone like Glue, and I imagine at MIRIMAR as well, where creativity, it's all the creative process, isn't it? It's from the brief to the inception of the idea to making it happen. It's all obviously a creative, thriving little thing. Where you're both from traditional agencies, but that's not meant to be a loaded word. What was the inspiration for doing your own thing?
I've always wanted to sort of do that. I had a pretty great first experience. I was at my very first job ever. I was like as junior as you can get, kind of like make yourself useful intern level at Wyburn TBWA back when Neil Lawrence was there, OG 2000. And it was such an amazing moment in time with some of the people in that creative department and the agency in general. It was a really special, didn't have any other context for comparison, but it turned out to be a very special nucleus of a lot of good people that had big careers. And I really loved that. And I love the entrepreneurial spirit and learned from some great people. And then pretty quickly, I've sort of founded with another guy, Pete Galmez, a very small indie little shop called Southpaw. And we kind of worked with Glue Society and Host and had that nice moment of being very entrepreneurial quite young. We had our own business at, I think,
I remember Southpaw.
When I was doing that. That was a lot of fun. And then got some exposure to bigger places. Like I was a CD at Saatchi's there, and then I went back to TBWA with my original kind of allies and mentors in Dave Bowman and Matty Burton and that crew, and I loved it. So there was some moments of dipping back into like the bigger agency life and learning in those moments and accessing more sort of structured opportunities. But ultimately, the whole time has been sort of an independent mindset and entrepreneurial mindset. And then America like really sort of fueled that to the next level. So I came and worked at Nike briefly, Nike Digital Sports, part of RGA, in beginning of 2012, which I loved. That was a very like steep learning curve of that part of my life. But I was pretty quickly at Droga, where I was the CD, and was part of that journey of 70 to 700 people. And I loved that. And I was itching to be back to the sort of indie side of things post that, like to really kind of just be in a position where you're doing the business on your terms and can really try and, you know, take big swings and do it, have the fun of doing it like that. So pretty quickly, we're back in that environment of being kind of entrepreneurs with an independent agency. And yeah, so a long way of saying it's kind of always been that rather than the other way around.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense. So you've always been looking for that spirit to be able to do your own thing and flex in the way you want to do it. And you've done it a few times already. What's been Mirimar's success? How have you guys managed to, you haven't been around that long, but you've made a massive impact and you've achieved some big accolades. What are you guys doing differently?
Thank you for saying that. That's nice to hear. I think a couple of things. I think even though Miramar is only 5 years old, John X. Hummus, prior to Miramar, was obviously a successful, you know, premium kind of creative services thing, and I was at Glue, and so I felt like we had a good background in that world of, you know, being smart about what creative projects you take on and then really trying to deliver them to a high standard and do something a little bit different. So it felt like Miramar was a culmination in some of those backgrounds of like we picked the pieces that felt like they were in service of creating something compelling and modern with everything going on. And I think part of that is not getting too big too quick, right? As soon as you've got too many mouths to feed, you have to make decisions based on the financial side of the business, as opposed to being able to be a little bit more curated in what you take on because you don't have huge teams. So I think we started off being really intentional about that, not getting too big too quick. I think the other thing, having worked at a lot of different places, you could just see that the thing that really moved the needle was, you know, 10, 15 great people, like people that are really good, having enough bandwidth to care about the project they were working on and actually kind of wrap their arms around it and see a project from start to finish. So that was a fundamental kind of piece that we wanted to make sure was in Miramar. Let's make sure we don't have too many things on at once and stretch our kind of senior people across too many things so that they can make work that is great. Because as you both know, as you go through the process, opportunities to make stuff better come up. But if you don't have the time or the bandwidth or the attention to do it, you just can't. So I think that was another critical part of how we started Miramar and what seems to have worked well.
So Miramax has now created some of the world's best films over the years, and you guys have been incredibly
questionable founder.
You're the brothers, right, of Miramax? Is that no?
I told you that was a bad joke when we rehearsed it, and it still is. But in that, I love the focus on you know, output, right, and making sure it's great, and really making sure that you don't get too big and you retain the focus. But a lot of agencies could say that, right? So what's the really the special thing about you guys? What makes you different? What makes you unlike other great creative agencies who want to do great work, like, right, we all do, but what's the thing, do you think, that really sets you guys apart from all those other great independent creative agencies in the States?
I think if there's one thing I feel rings true is, you know, we kind of have this belief that the cultural significance for brands is really their most powerful sort of competitive advantage, right? If they can be culturally significant and they can be memorable and they can be showing up, you know, beyond comms in a way in the world that's really meaningful, that's sort of like our starting point for how we think about our role in helping a brand achieve that sort of that powerful positioning. And I think the fact that like we go straight to where we're trying to take them in the market in a bigger sense, that's been compelling to clients, but it's also helped us kind of get out of the sort of elements of everything being thought of through the lens of just simple execution or comms, but rather like, how are we trying to build an iconic, culturally significant brand? What are the ways we can like help you show up? And that rings, that sort of resonates with the leaders and the founders of the company. So you can sort of crack into some good access when you're thinking like that. And then I think our work has felt as much part of sort of culture's overused, but sort of part of that cultural moments as opposed to simply advertising. And that's driven fame. That's driven us to be able to work with, celebrity talent that want to be in ads that don't just feel like regular ads. And that amorphous of advertising and entertainment through that has definitely helped us kind of, I think, get to a good place quicker than if we'd sort of just really come at it through a very advertising lens.
You grew up on Miramar Avenue in Tamarama, right? And I assume if you did, that's the reason why the company's called Miramar.
It is.
Yeah, great. And so...
Not Miramax.
No, but Miramax, I think the analogy, or I think the confusion, and the reason why I kind of did that ham-fisted joke before, if you could call it that, was because I wonder what impression that's doing for your brand if you're trying to fuse yourself between this kind of advertising and entertainment space. I wonder if the misattribution of Miramax in your clients' minds is helping position you in that world of entertainment.
It's got nothing to do. Are you serious?
Yeah, I'm totally serious. I reckon it does. I think words and associations are important. And if you're called Miramar and there's a massive movie house called Miramax,
do you get Disney misattribution with Think
all
About?
the time.
Okay.
Discuss. Maybe. There's enough bad press and PR about Miramax and the founder there that I'm sure it cuts both ways.
Both ways.
Any upside, there's downside.
I'd imagine being in LA is probably
and that too
important part of this idea of we're at the intersection of advertising and entertainment. We want to build culturally significant brands. I mean, do you think it's an advantage being in LA when you're trying to do that type of work?
For sure. We quite intentionally. We were in New York and we wanted to be headquartered in Los Angeles for that very reason. There's so many makers here, if you think about, from directors, writers, great actors, talent, musicians and everything. So it being a creative hub has been really helpful, especially when you're trying to do something that's a little bit different. If you want to work with people in a slightly non-traditional way, being in LA is the place for that. So yeah, LA's been a big part of it for sure.
I'm going to ignore my co-host. I reckon my question's good.
You go back to it.
And I'm going to go back to it. What impact do you reckon as a movie house called Miramax has had on the Miramar brand?
In the beginning, the branding looked a bit similar and we kind of absolutely changed that. A few people have said it, not many people have said it, but a few people in the beginning have asked, did you ever get confused with Miramax? I think the letters are good. I like Miramar. I like the shape of the letters. I think the word is strong. I love the meaning, Miramar, view of the sea. And, it's the street we grew up on. Plus, we used to look over the ocean, and now the offices looks over the same ocean from the other side. So I love the name, but as far as the connection to Miramax, I think maybe the length of the name shows that it's kind of a good name, but I've had zero kind of connection from that other than, in the very, very beginning 5 years ago where maybe that was more of a relevant question about him. Yeah.
I tell you what, while we're on the name, I do love that extra meaning of
view of the sea. Beautiful.
Yeah, and the opposite view from where you grew up. That's really lovely. I mean, it's much more meaningful than just the street you grew up on. I mean, it's a fantastic story in that, which is really cool.
Yeah, thank you. It's nice.
Does that come through in any of your internal philosophies or how you've codified your brand or anything like that internally?
Yeah, for sure. With the big, we put out the financial efforts towards the cause that we support is called For Ocean, which is a non-profit that it's a very cool, novel idea of paying fishermen the same price to catch plastic rather than fish. Really cool idea.
Cool.
And so
that's really cool.
We're one of the marquee sponsors of that. We fund it every year. The ocean, view of the sea is a big part of our lives, our culture, our imagery, the agency's kind of tone. I love the kind of therapeutic nature of the ocean too, and being able to walk down there at any moment. And it's a very moody place down here in Venice in the sense it's, at the moment it's covered in a marine layer of fog, and then it's obviously beautiful blue skies half the time. So yeah, the ocean and feeling that little bit closer to your origin point of Australia being just across the water, it feels nice. Feels like a good balance.
And there's something too, I think, because I lived in San Francisco, not LA, but there's something I think in the sort of Californian attitude and way of life that I think feels more like Australia than living in New York.
For sure. Definitely.
Yeah, I think I feel like we're very lucky here in the sense we get the best of it. You get access to this amazing country and opportunities and scale and entertainment, as well as a lifestyle that matches some of the things we loved about growing up in Australia. And we're in New York regularly. We're just there a few days ago. That's definitely part of our life. But California seems to be the best of it all. I love it here.
And what you're talking about there in terms of the view of the ocean and so on, I might be torturing it a little bit here, but does that carry through into how you approach your work or your creative process at all?
My one note on that is, I think there's a positivity that comes with it. I think Australians in general are pretty positive and kind of approach things with a glass half full kind of mentality and a let's solve the problem kind of mentality. And I think that definitely is something that's resonated with in America overall, but here with our team as well, that pulls through is we get that we're trying to solve things positively when we're dealing with brands and we're looking at the challenges they have, or we're framing up their brand platforms. It's always through that positive lens. So I do think that side of it has probably made its way into the business for sure.
That's cool.
Brent, you know the reason why I'd make a crap CMO?
Risk and compliance meetings?
Apart from that, it's really, really complicated, and it can also be incredibly slow and tough. For example, how do you decide how much money to put into brand spending?
Yeah, it's a big decision. And I think we've seen a lot of marketers be really addicted to the drug of performance marketing, which gives you an immediate payback. But I think you really want to be understanding the long-term benefits of brand. You need to measure that over time, and you need to also understand that if you start trading off, spending more on brand, less on performance, you need to know straight away, is that working? Is it delivering? And so you need some sort of model to do that. Without a model, I don't know how you'd even start.
Such as what?
Well, Mutinex. It's the best one out there. It's the best one out there, man. It's SaaS-based. It's really one of the most cutting-edge marketing mix models you can get. And if you've got hard questions that you're trying to confront as a marketer, I would thoroughly recommend a tool like Mutinex.
They're also the sponsor of this show, right?
Yes.
Excellent.
And just on that, creative process, it's quite hard sometimes to articulate a creative process or to put it into words but how would you describe it when you think about, the way you guys come up with ideas, the way you like to work with clients? Like, what's it like?
The two things we seem to, part of it, I think you find your feet through what works, right? And you kind of get more firmer in your beliefs that that's the right way forward. But I think the two ways we get used that seem to play to our strengths, and we're definitely building the business around it, is we're good at helping brands really develop and uncover and then scale that sort of ownable core creative idea. I think that ability to help brands unlock their really truthful, the soul of it through their core creative idea is something that we've had a lot of success and enjoyment from doing and enduring platforms and work. Mm-hmm. And then part two of that is then how do we then, in order for that higher order goal of building that culturally significant brand, we then go and set the goal of creating breakthrough work that can really achieve a lot of outsized attention without relying on paid media alone. That's definitely our thing of like, how can we use ideas that are a mix of concept, PR, entertainment, talent. How can we kind of like create a moment here that really achieves far bigger attention than you could just simply through paid? So I think our process pretty much reflects that. We often start in a transformational moment with a company when they're willing or ready to do that big thing. It's a real privilege to be brought in that moment. We work very hard to try and uncover a core creative idea that feels very true to them. And then, the team is really good at thinking about ways to sort of create these moments that are really going to get the internet's attention and be bigger than ads. And that seems to be our calling card, and we love it.
So you've got two very different types of idea there. You've got an enduring platform idea or essential organising thought that stays with the business for years. And you've got stunty, earnedy ideas that get their own momentum, don't need to pay for necessarily. Can you just put a magnifying glass on the process of those coming up with those different types of ideas and tell us how the process is different?
Well, the first one lives. There's a lot of strategic work done in the first part. Obviously, that's definitely that process and that immersion in the client's business and understanding where they're going and really trying to. Often the answers are there already, right? It's whether they've moved on from them or whether it's a case of them restoring the confidence to like agree with the thing that makes them distinctive and unique. So really that top part is honestly a strategic and creative exercise of getting in there, spending a lot of time immersing ourselves. And then part two, it's often an and thing in the sense we then show up with hopefully great assets that even when they're put into paid media still over index in their ability to achieve attention. But we like to add to that plan for the year something that is going to make your brand have a chance to be loved, to burn particularly hot. And that involves, that PR orchestration on top of paid media. And like the Rocket examples are probably a good one right now. The Rocket we just worked on, and that's exactly this process, right? Where we were brought in and given great access and trust to help develop that core creative idea, which is Own the Dream. And that sort of came out of really that interesting place that America finds itself in of just 84% of Americans now thinking home ownership is out of reach, right, for them. And so you've got a full-blown housing crisis, and then you have the biggest mortgage company in America looking to kind of reinvigorate people's belief in sort of home ownership and the power of it itself. So that was a very interesting challenge to kind of gave us part one of the process, and then part two, Super Bowl into some of the PR stunts we did.
Yeah, and you got to work with Jonathan Mildenhall, who, CMO fanboy here.
Yeah, he's like the world's Brent Smart.
I don't think he compares himself to me in any way, shape or form. But what was Jonathan like to work with? Obviously, he had a big vision for Rocket. I know he talked about, make it a culturally significant brand, which from where Rocket is a big sort of vision and a big leap. Was he amazing to work with? Tell us a bit about working with a CMO like Jonathan.
He's amazing as a person. He's amazing as a leader. He's amazing as a CMO. He's really a special person, and I both become great colleagues, friends, admire him greatly. So he got us into work prior on some other businesses he was doing. And Rocket was the first one that we, at this scale and scope, that was kind of, formalized as to like, let's make it together. But Jonathan's amazing. He's got an ability to really bring people up with real amounts of optimism and bravery. He definitely leads from the front in a way that is very, very human and kind. I really connect with that energy from him. It's about optimism, love, and bravery, not sort of fear and bringing people down. So there was a good sort of. He's got a lot of loyal people working hard for him. So I'm also on the in the fan club now, but maybe Luke can add some context as well. But he's been a wonderful collaborator.
Yeah, I would echo that. We knew him from his work, but getting the chance to work with him has been great. And everything John said in terms of respect and just seeing someone that can. Where I think he's really got a superpower is because of the organisations he's been in, and he's had to move so many different types of stakeholders along that vision. So if you think about him from Coke and then Airbnb, where he's working with founders, he's working with hosts and those types of things. He's got this ability to set a vision and then bring very disparate groups of stakeholders along that journey. So he's not just fighting a marketing fight. He's fighting a business alignment as well as a marketing and advertising fight. And the way in which he does that, as John said, is through ambition, positivity, leadership, bringing people up. And that's been really special to see. So you add what I hope is kind of great creative to that mix. And he really is the champion of it internally. And he's got the founder of Rocket on his side, really believing in the evolution of the brand. He's got the CEO who brought him in. He's done the same thing that he does in other places. He's elevated the mission much beyond just a marketing communication thing. And he's made it very, very human and a lot bigger, which is great.
He seems to be good at managing his career as well. Like everywhere he goes kind of seems to make sense, and then he tackles really big problems and kind of elevates the businesses he works on. This is going to be slightly clunky, but I do want to go back to those two different types of ideas because I think what you said before was really interesting. We can talk about it with Rocket as an example. You said when you were developing the platform idea, it's about going back to what's kind of normally often what's already there, and it really felt like you were unearthing something or digging out something, as opposed to the more the other type of earn stuff where you're trying to build something or layer something on top of something. So it felt like with the platform, you're digging, and trying to find the truth about the brand or the business, and that's your thing. Once you understand that, you're then just trying to layer on anything that kind of sticks in terms of throwing stuff at that platform to see if it's right. Would that be?
Yeah, no, I try and answer that because I like the depth of that question. I think the way we think about the first one, it's actually about sort of revealing the core creative idea, right? I think that's the way to think about it. Is sort of finding the truth, finding the soul of it, finding something they say, yes, that's it. That's the thing. And then our job then needs to be to sort of make that simple, hopefully insightful truth well known in the broader context of the culture, right? So what do we do? Part two, I almost skipped over the part that we also make it famous through regular channels as well. It's just about how do we take the truth and make it sort of bubble up in places that's a bit poppier than just the standard stuff. So it's not trickery on top of that. It's like, how do we make that CCI famous? And often that involves, in America, shortcuts with entertainment, PR, talent, things like that.
And in this case with Rocket, it was a Super Bowl spot and it was a famous song, right? It was the bit that sort of helped with that popular culture bit, right?
Yeah, it was that, and it was also there was a live in stadium moment. That was a lot of orchestration went into. That song has got a lot of momentum of its ability to bring people together, and it's harks back to that shared yearning for home. And then we did a modern cover, and we brought a lot of diverse, interesting voices together to sort of give it a fresh life. But the thing that makes it interesting, I think, in the context of Super Bowl was coming off that 60-second spot. It's all a live broadcast, record viewership, very sort of big moment. That actually coming back from the live broadcast to the stadium itself, we had partnered with the NFL and Fox and sort of pulled off for the first time an in-stadium sing-along that would match the song that had just played in the ad. So for the 130 million people watching the broadcast, when the commercial ended, it cut to people in the stadium singing the chorus of the song seamlessly from the ad itself.
We've started doing something quite similar with Tui's, getting the crowd to sing "I Feel Like a Tui's."
I love it.
Which is
Alan Morris.
Yeah, exactly. Similar idea, quite a different tone. Jonathan Mendenhall is quite famous for promoting diversity and inclusion and being a flag waver for everyone having a voice. That's reflected in the Rocket work with, as you say, all the different diverse voices in it. I'm just going to touch on this quickly. Does that kind of thinking still have a role in America post November 2024?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's even more important at the moment because, when that saying, it's only a principle if it costs you money, right? And you're seeing a lot of these companies lose their backbone and renege on. It's Black History Month at the moment, so it's kind of a topical moment. So yeah, I think, Jonathan's certainly been a champion of that. Rocket as a company certainly sort of believes in that ethos. MIRIMAR believes in that ethos. So for us, that wasn't really like anything that even had to be thought about other than let's reflect the full fabric of America. But having a stance of inclusivity right now has become the opposition to where the energy is going. It sort of feels like if you're just supporting that concept of diversity and inclusion, which seems so fundamental and primal, you're almost now pushed off to the margin. So we're beating that drum. We're doubling down on that. This wasn't the starting point for the film, but I'm very happy with the final product that the filmmaker himself was, young 28-year-old black guy that's never made a Super Bowl ad before. It was opportunities on every level, right? Then manifested through that campaign. But yeah, it's a shit moment for American culture that things that are just human values have suddenly kind of been pushed to the sides as though they're political stances and they're just as valid as the hateful version. So, I'm happy to go on the record of where I stand.
It's fucking bizarre.
Well said. Well
yeah,
said.
very well said.
And I would just on that though, one other point is diversity. If you know who Rocket is speaking to, right? They're a Detroit-based company that is speaking to the middle of America. Diversity is a fact. You're not deciding between speaking to, inclusion or anything like that. Diversity is a fact of the very people that use their product and want to have home ownership in America. So it's not even Jonathan needing to decide, does this need to be inclusive? It's just the people that are going to be picking this up is all of Americans, and in a lot of instances, they have these great programs that allow people that normally couldn't afford a home to get into homes, right? That's one of the fantastic things about Dan Gilbert, who's the founder. He's also a billionaire and very philanthropic in terms of the way he invests his money. He's able to give people that wouldn't otherwise be able to get into homes through a bunch of programs like matching deposits and renting to buy. There's a lot of things that are just built in that's about giving more people access to that. And it's honestly not through the lens of diversity and inclusion. It's through the lens of that's who is in those parts of America that they need to speak to. So I just, yes, totally everything that we've both just said about kind of the moment America's in, but it's not even through that lens. It's just that's what
just the truth.
Is the truth.
Yeah.
That's who we're speaking to have a successful company.
So one of the things we like to do here is put people's creative work to something we call the pub test, where we show it to a whole lot of people in a pub and see what they think. So we've taken the ad for Rocket, which was made in America for an American audience. We've showed it to some Australians in a pub to see what they think. Let's have a listen. And we haven't heard this, so let's have a listen.
The pub test is brought to you by Dealy, the insights platform where ideas go to grow.
What do I make of this ad? Well, it's very beautifully shot. Has every little wholesome cliche you could probably ask for. It was quite nicely done, though.
Heavy on the emotions, and I still don't actually know what we're selling. I've even got a lovely Web3 website to scroll on down and have all the pretty pictures come by, and I still don't know what we're selling.
It's a kind of spot that could be used for 100 different brands. An insurance company, a bank, a airline.
Does it capture the emotional journey of buying a home? Somewhat, I guess.
It captured home life and maybe transitions. I don't think there's any... You're the first to tell me that it's about buying a home.
As someone who just bought a home, I think there is much more heartache and stress and frustration that is involved in buying a home. In saying that, it does capture the aspirational element of purchasing a home, but it does capture that feeling of seeing the laundry sink and thinking that one day you're going to wash your child in that sink. So I like that it does capture those emotional elements.
To be honest, I just kind of want the best rate, really.
I would like my bank/mortgage provider to probably tell me what the deal is and if it's better than the other guy. I
would love to feel like super happy and like I'm coming home when I'm buying something, but the reality is like you buy a house, then you're stuck with a 30-year mortgage.
Does this pass the pub test? Look, yes it does, but not with flying colours for me.
I think it passed the advertising pub test.
But yeah, I think it passes the pub test.
No, that was good to hear. That was good to hear. All valid points of view for sure. Yeah.
Tell me about selling.
That was we would have put Speedo in. Speedo would have done a bit better in an Aussie pub.
Yeah.
We would have. We thought about that, but we just thought Rocket is so, relevant for right now. But it's always a challenge when we show American work, right? Because you're not making it for an Australian context, and
Americans have a higher tolerance of
positivity,
optimistic emotion than Australians do.
For sure. Absolutely.
And that impacts the creative work they see, right?
That's obviously something that you acclimate to when you work here and really, and not just in a way.
Hang on, acclimate. That's an American word.
Acclimatise.
You mean acclimatise?
Sorry, mate.
You mean acclimatise?
Acclimate is unreal.
Oh, what?
I'm going to be. I like it.
Sorry, mate. Sorry, guys. Now, what a perfect example of what I'm trying to talk about getting in America, but no.
That's okay,
America
sir.
Is a tougher place. more heartache, more hardship than Australian life. And I think emotional, especially emotion through those sort of places, people aren't as cynical around it. So there's an accessibility to optimism and emotion through those things that's far more American than it is in Australia. I learned.
I also think there's a context right now where we're not seeing that type of work from our banks. We're not seeing emotional storytelling. We're seeing, where's the rate? It's much more rational. We don't have that, right?
Yeah.
Would you say that from the banks right now?
Brands used to, I think it's what's interesting, in developing markets, brands play that aspirational role much more than in a developed market. In developed markets, like, just show me a real person doing real things and you're a bit like me, so I'll buy it. Whereas I think in developing markets, you still need the hope that brands give. So, I can be like that. I can aspire to that. I think maybe the crumbling decay and cesspit that is America, with all due respect, there is still that role for brands to help get me out of this mess. And maybe that's why they still have this kind of clinging on to these kind of big emotional concepts. Don't know. That's just
I would agree with that. It's also like being a home ownership company. For us, it felt very natural to go to that place, right? Of like, home is one of the concepts we all agree on, and home ownership does have the ability to be transformative in people's lives. It creates generational wealth. It often is the sort of domino between never getting off the treadmill in life financially and renting through to like progress for you and your family. And so to play it in a sincere context, certainly it felt natural to us and felt like the natural environment and the inclusive way to sort of showcase home.
And also the starting point, the core of the brief is 84% of Americans don't believe home ownership is out of reach for them. Job one is to like show the joy of home and make them believe in that again. And obviously you have to very quickly as a company and as a brand follow up with how, and not just say you can have it, make it look pretty and all those things. You need to very quickly show them the practical ways they can do that. But there is a job to get people to even think about that as being an option again. So for sure, there's an earnestness that comes with that as a kind of goal.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. So that you've taken the kind of the category need, which I would imagine is kind of there in people already, and you really should be just trying to own your own slice of that. But you're actually saying the whole role of Rocket is to help get Americans to believe that it's actually is home ownership is within reach. So you are trying to build on the dream. You're not just assuming it's already there. Yeah, which is good. Hey, Daniel Gilbert, just for people really into behavioural sciences out there, is not the same Daniel Gilbert who wrote Stumbling on Happiness, which is a fantastic book.
No, he's the founder of Rocket Mortgages.
I know, I've been looking it up going,
Detroit.
Oh my God, because one of the founders of Lemonade is a guy called Dan Ariely, who's a behavioural economist. And then I suddenly thought, fuck, are there two amazing big brands? But there's not. So
started by behavioural. No. Hey, so you talked a lot before about the importance of, culture for brands, and a lot of your ideas really do find a way to, tap into culture and create real sort of cultural momentum for brands. So as an agency, how do you sort of cultivate that in your people? Like, is it something do you spend more time studying culture, in culture? Like, how do you sort of...
That's a practical question. So I'd love a practical response. Like, how literally do you do that?
It's a tricky question to answer, isn't it? How do you find great creative people? It's a really nuanced, tricky question to answer, and I think it depends a lot on.
So is that it? Do you look for people? You look for people who have an inherent sort of cultural intelligence and passion.
Yeah, you know what? One of our core kind of beliefs and values that we share with everyone and believe in, obviously, is to be interested and being interested in the world around us, in culture, whether that's films, TV, sports, activities. Being interested, I think, is the biggest shortcut to be able to tell interesting stories on behalf of brands and be interesting. So we really kind of promote that. And for sure, I think as we bring people into the team, we're looking for them to have that. It doesn't doesn't have to obviously come from the same place. So diversity of interest and diversity of kind of opinions and points of views is another kind of way to bring that intangible piece that you're talking about with the cultural. And then we do have great strategists, and we work very, very hard to find kind of, human truths or ignitions or sparks that we can kind of find that what's going on in the world. Why is this talent being talked about in this way? And how, if we were to do a talent partnership with them, what extra juice do we get out of what's going on with them culturally? And if we use them as the real person as opposed to an actor, what do we get from that extra that we might not have otherwise? So I do think talent partnerships and the ability to identify those and kind of leverage those is a big part of it. Yeah, and then bringing people in that see the world that way and are looking to try and find those moments that they can springboard off.
And have you had to bring people into the business who understand that talent world, or do you partner with, the creative artists and people like that? Like how do you get that level of talent partnership? Because can't any agency just find a good celeb? How do you guys do it differently?
I think America's not short of being able to find access to celebrities for sure. I think there's definitely a difference between strategic, mutually beneficial talent partnerships as opposed to just the insertion of a celebrity. We love it because, to John's point before around really trying to engage audiences at scale without relying on paid media alone. A great way of doing that is the exponential value you can get from great talent partnerships. So finding something that is of interest to the audience that we're speaking to, that they're going to kind of resonate and want to choose to engage with, as opposed to just, see it as an ad. That's a big part of it. It's the ability to bring those people together and make sure that what we're offering is going to be mutually beneficial, right?
Yeah.
So if it's a musician, what album do they have coming out, and what's the timeline for that album, and what are they going to be doing from a tour point of view? So fueling that with a moment with a big brand and getting the interest around that, you're going to have a much better creative conversation with them if there's an idea that kind of acknowledges what's going on with them in the real world. So finding those moments that are mutually beneficial for them, and then having creative work that's open to be shaped and collaborated with by them. I think that our creative team do a great job of that, of making sure the ideas are open enough that we can bring those people in and benefit from them participating.
Are you the production company, or do you use a production company?
We use production companies. Yeah.
So you're not a glue.
No.
You've got a more established structure where you're a creative agency and then you'll use a production company. You don't try to fuse those two things together.
Correct. Yeah.
But we do have a more intimate model of how we make stuff that I think feels a little bit different. I'll try and answer very practically your question before.
Great.
One of the ways, especially if it's new teams, is say you need to see concepts from them that would not have any paid media whatsoever. Like, how is this thing going to just stand on its own 2 feet? And what you find from that response is they are forced to think of ways to generate an idea that's got interest unto itself. Or if they reach for talent, you find the first thing they're setting up with, hey, you know how this talent, she has a beef with this person, and it's already in this interesting place where they're forcing themselves to be insightful as to what's going on. And that for me has been a really useful way, especially bringing people onto brands like Beats and things like that, where you often get amazing, iconic talent, but that's going to not have paid media necessarily. So that's often something that's inherent in our workflow that we would bring in and teach to new teams as well as we bring them in.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool because that constraint means you get more creativity, right? Like if you took away paid media, what would you do? It's a fantastic way to put a constraint in that actually leads to a more creative solution. I love that. Do
you use talent management in-house? Is that something you do externally, out of curiosity?
We've got a suite of BA partners that we use in a freelance capacity, and then we've got, for certain things, we have an external kind of company.
Do you know what BA is? That's very American. Adam's looking. It's business affairs.
Business
affairs, which is in America. That's a big part of the production process.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
And you use some external and some in the agency. Did you say, Luke?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And it's a little bit dependent on who they are and if we're going to have to be navigating, other licensing deals. Like if it's an NFL player and there's NFL IP, then you're probably going to look to bring in a specialist that has that sports background or music versus
hired guns in LA who really know that specific area and that type of talent. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you look at the way some of the contracts are written, ultimately the risk sits with us, so it's pretty important to have
to get that right.
Yeah, absolutely.
We sort of talked a little bit at the start about the fact that, you know, your brothers, one does a creative bit, one does a business bit, but you kind of collaborate in a really great way. What are you guys complementary? How does it work? Because I could not imagine running a business with my brother. I just could not imagine doing that. I mean, so has it always been you guys are really complementary, different strengths, different, like just how does the relationship work so well?
I think it's a huge plus, right? Like it's a big, noisy, competitive place, right? America, and I think having a real ally with loyalty, and you don't have to question that aspect of the relationship. So it's just almost like such a foundational thing to know that like you're rock solid when it comes to money, trust, all these things. That's just taken care of, and then you get to be honest and direct when things are pissing you off, and vice versa. So I don't know if it would have worked when we were younger necessarily, but now coming together at an age and a stage in our careers and sort of with a shared ambition of doing something special, I'm really grateful to have Luke. It's the perfect partner to have sitting next to me, as opposed to, trying to build that connection with someone I haven't got the history with. So I see it as very positive. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah. And trust. It's really about trust more than anything else.
Totally. And once that trust is secured, you can get straight into all these other things that you need to sort of deal with in a relationship, but that foundation's solid.
Luke?
No, I echo it. I think John's right. It probably wouldn't have worked as you coming up in your career because you're not kind of self-aware of what your strengths and your weaknesses are. And I think getting to that point and being really clear in where you can add value and probably where you need to shut up is been a big part of it. The trust is massive, right? Like the amount of partnerships that you hear and talk about that have issues because of, money's a big one, or there's people being undermined or not sharing kind of the accolades. And I think if that's just off the table because, you trust them implicitly, as John said, you're freed up to worry about other things. And it's pretty great. Like if you know that someone else is on another part of the business, great, you've got that handled and you don't have to worry. And nearly every decision you would make, not creatively and from a business point of view, but big picture, philosophically, every decision you would make, even if that other person's not in the room, is going to be pretty close to being the same. That's just a pretty empowering kind of place to be.
You don't have to answer this question if you want. If it's rude, forgive me and just say fuck off. But are you guys equal partners, and do you have other partners or other investors in the business?
Yeah, we're partners, and there's other people with some minority stakes that have been loyal and important parts of the journey that we're all on together. But Luke and I are the independent foundational owners together. Yep.
And those other partners work in the business, do they?
Yep.
That's great. On that, do you then talk about all of them being partners internally? Is that a big thing? Or do you just say the partnership's just a business model and move on? Everyone's got a sense of ownership of the agency.
No, I'll give you an example. Nick Morrissey's our ECD, and he's a friend and a colleague, an amazing guy that I love, and he's been a part of MIRIMAR since the beginning, and he's got equity in the business and he's a partner, and it's very much referred to as a partner. So Nick is known for that. He's done some amazing work at White & Kennedy and then at Apple directly, very famous work, and he's just been, for our agency to start at the size it was, but have someone at that caliber at day dot, that's been amazing. That's open discussion for sure.
Awesome.
Unreal, man. That's great.
It's been great talking to you guys, and congratulations on all the success. It's great to watch from back here on the other side of the water. But hey, we like to finish up by asking our guests if you could sum up your creative philosophy on a slogan and put it on a black T-shirt, what would it be? And we get 2 here. You get 1 each. So
we might send them to you, but they may never arrive as well. So just want to manage expectations.
they might arrive one day in LA. But John, what would if you could put in on a black T-shirt? What would be your creative philosophy?
I think the biggest risk is making expensive wallpaper. You know, like stuff that's ignored and forgotten. Like that's a bigger risk than a fuck up. So to say it with clarity, I think the biggest risk is to make work that no one notices. The biggest risk to make work. No, I like the wallpaper bit.
Yeah, the biggest risk is wallpaper.
The wallpaper could be in Miramar. Yeah. You could get that.
That's in our creds deck.
Yeah. So
that quote's in our creds deck. That's how much we believe it. It's
right.
Love it.
You spend so much money on, in man hours as well, on thinking and creating and production, and then media dollars to create something that's not going to be kind of like seen, or you don't even get a chance to communicate with people if you don't get their attention.
Well, that's most advertising, right? So the biggest risk is expensive wallpaper. Yeah, lock it in.
Yeah, sure.
Righto, Luke, what do you got?
I feel like all of the things that I would have said have just been stolen from me. But I like the idea that like everything's hard, so you might as well make it great.
Everything's hard, so you might as well make it great.
Yeah, it's just as hard to do something shit as it is to do something good.
That's it, right? And like you're going to put your endeavors towards your time and your energy and everything towards something, and why not make it great? And we have a philosophy that's about kind of doing that, leaning in, making things better whenever you can across the agency. So yeah, try and make it as great as you can.
That's a pretty fresh thought. It's all hard.
It is.
So you may as well make it.
It's just as hard to make something shit.
Yeah.
It's very true. Hey guys, thanks so much for coming on. It's been awesome to talk to you. You got an amazing story, and best of luck. Keep doing great work and flying the flag for us Aussies over there in America.
Thank you very much for having us. It was a really it was nice to see this invitation come through, and like admire both of you guys for the work you've done and stuff. And I was really it was cool. So thanks for sitting down with us. It's nice to meet you, and cool.
It was excellent.
Real pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Brendan. Enjoy the chat.
God bless.
Good on you guys. At Black T-Shirts, we like ads featuring supermodels. And the most supermodel is the Mutant X market mix model.
Picture this, if you will. A little computer with a little algorithm. And inside that algorithm is a market mix modeling program. That's Mutant X. Hello.
Or if you want to get serious about measuring effectiveness, talk to Mutant X. They're the world's leading SaaS provider of market mix modeling. Marketers, think of it as a growth co-pilot. Mutant X, make better decisions.
What do you reckon, Brent?
Great to meet those guys, and fantastic, as always, to see some Aussies going over to America and conquering the big market.
In terms of the creative process, there were quite a few things there that were interesting. The first one was the difference between getting a central organising thought and an activation or an idea off that. When John was talking about the central organising thought, he was talking about digging deep, unearthing something, restoring something that's already there. So it's kind of like an archaeological dig where you're looking around and doing it, as opposed to the activations or the stunts or the entertainment off that is kind of adding something to that or working out what you can put into the world.
Yeah.
And I quite like that.
Yeah, and on the second piece, I love the way he said, we challenge our creative teams. What would you do if you didn't have any media money?
Yeah.
So that inherently makes you think about ideas that will get buzz and get talked about. And I think it's really simple.
Really simple.
But makes such sense. And that might be the new, remember it used to be the Alex Bogusky write the PR headline.
Yeah.
I actually like the idea of if you had no media budget, what would you do more? I think that leads to some really good thinking.
Yeah, I think so too. Then you've got an idea and it will have its own momentum and you can support that with media if you do have media budget. But just thinking about it without it is great. The other thing I think is worth touching on is the difference of tolerance between, for a big emotional types of advertising between, so the rocket work, how suitable and relevant that was for America versus Australian culture and other types of cultures, and just how much aspiration or how much emotion you can layer into advertising these days. You just don't see that type of ad that much in this market. No, and maybe we need more of it. More sort of big emotional storytelling. I mean, I thought the reaction in the pub test was interesting when the Aussies start saying, like, "Where's the rate?" Yeah. I think a lot of our
bank advertising and financial service advertising super rational, and we could do with a bit more of that sort of aspiration and emotion in that category.
And do you still aspire? Like, you used to tell me that you want to be the next Jonathan Mindenhall. Is that still your career aspiration?
Oh, look, I'm a big fan. I think his ability to do work that gets into culture, but most impressively, the way he and the boys talked about it on the podcast, the way he's able to get the organisation aligned and behind him, I think is incredibly impressive. And I think that's what the great CMOs do. I mean, look, Airbnb, now Rocket, I think he's got an incredible Coca-Cola for that. He's got an incredible track record of big, culturally significant work.
And apparently lovely. Everyone says he's lovely.
Yeah, well, exactly. As those guys were too. I mean, again, great, to meet very talented people who are humble.
Yeah, it's good. It's very nice. I've got a lot to learn.